Awesome. All right. Well, I'll start with a little intro about Sarcophagus, just a bit, get anyone who might be new listening to this familiarized, and then we'll start talking about V2. Sarcophagus is a decentralized dead man switch built on Ethereum and Arweave. A dead man switch is a switch that is designed to be activated by the operator failing to interact. One example of this would be a train. If the operator lets go of the lever on a train, then it comes to a stop safely. There are quite a few applications for something like this, and some of the use cases could include a will and testament, emergency communications, political activism, password recovery, time capsule, or even some on-chain stored journalism and backup data like that. Sarcophagus executes contracts on Ethereum and wraps data in 2 layers of encryption, then stores it on the Arweave chain. This makes the data private and immutable, both in form and delivery. Recently, V2 development started, and that's why we're here today. We'll be talking with the builders from Sarcophagus and Decent DAO about the upcoming features and the state of development now, as well as answering some questions. Once we reach the Q&A section, please request to speak, and we will give you the mic access to ask your questions. And with that, I will turn over the mic, and we'll start talking about some V2 stuff.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate the intro.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Sarcophagus V2 has, so I think one of the most important features of the V2 development is something that a lot of us builders and users of the system have identified as one of the biggest issues with the version 1 design is the archaeologist is a big single point of failure in the life cycle of a specific sarcophagus. So actually, just to help define terms real quickly, we call this whole thing, we also use the term sarcophagus, I guess with a small s, to identify like a like single dead man switch instance. So when somebody's like using the system and they wanna set up one of these dead man switches, I call the creation and the life cycle of like that specific instance of this dead man switch and its life cycle. Call that a sarcophagus as well. So anyway, an archaeologist is another actor in the system who honestly has a lot of power over a single sarcophagus. There is in the V1 design. When a sarcophagus is being created, a single archaeologist is chosen to perform important actions on that sarcophagus over time. Specifically, they need to be around whenever that dead man switch triggers in order to decrypt some data. So like, as Johnny mentioned, there's a couple layers of encryption in each of these data payloads. That outer layer of encryption is a layer that the archaeologist for a sarcophagus has the key to. So when a dead man switch is triggered, an archaeologist, and just one archaeologist, the one that was chosen at the point of creation, needs to be around and online and active and ready to decrypt that payload and then or I guess publish. They're not decrypting it. They publish the private key to the blockchain so that it can be decrypted, and then the inner layer is then available so that the recipient of this sarcophagus can get their plain text back. So anyway, back to my point. There's a lot of importance placed upon that archaeologist. There's two main issues with just a single archaeologist being responsible for that job. One is that there's a lot of trust placed on that archaeologist to not publish their private key, not leak that data ahead of time before they're quote unquote supposed to. There are incentives built into the system so that if they do leak that private key early and somebody finds out about it, they can their bond can be slashed. So there is an incentive for them, not to leak data early. However, there's trust placed there, and maybe an archaeologist, depending on the payload, they might get paid off by somebody else to even more than their bounties would be slashed by. So anyway, there's trust there that they won't leak data early, and there's also the assumption that they will be around and online and available whenever that dead man switch gets triggered, which could be any arbitrary date in the future, as long as the creator of the sarcophagus is pinging this dead man switch on chain and extending the life of it. It could be days or months or years before this sarcophagus actually needs to be quote unquote unwrapped, dealt with. And there's the expectation that this single archaeologist that was chosen at the point of creation will be online and available, and will be able to publish that private key at the right time. So those are the two main issues with just having a single archaeologist with a single sarcophagus. So one of the big, I guess, in my mind, one of the biggest things that we wanted to do to fix that was to try to figure out how can we have one sarcophagus associated with multiple archaeologists, where we could do two things with a structure in which there are multiple archaeologists per sarcophagus. It would fix the issue of one archaeologist having too much power, and being able to leak data early. What if any one archaeologist or any subset of archaeologists literally didn't have all of the information that would be needed in order to leak data that shouldn't be leaked early? So if we could actually remove that data availability from any one archaeologist, that would solve that issue. And the other thing is about at the time of unwrapping in the future, what if that one archaeologist happens to be offline or isn't available or whatever? Well, if we split that up amongst a set of archaeologists, we could actually make it where we required only, let's say, 3 of 5 archaeologists to be around at the time of unwrapping. So, even if 1 or 2 are offline, that wouldn't have a detrimental effect on the, closing out that sarcophagus. Basically, as long as 3 are around, those 3 can get together, publish their data to the chain, and then the sarcophagus can be completed. So in my mind, that's huge. That's a really big design win for the system, and one of the features I'm most excited about. We're using different types of, encryption. I don't know. There's cool cryptography happening there. Shamir secret sharing is a way where we're actually splitting data up amongst a subset or a set of archaeologists, splitting keys up so that any subset of them can get together to recreate private keys. I don't know. It's neat. I mean, I guess we could dig into more technical stuff if we want to, but it's probably a good place for me to pause here.
I think there's something we're talking about here in terms of the multiple archaeologist cursing structure. We make a really, really big deal about pairing the risk of the payload with the structure of the switch, or the structure of the sarcophagus, right? So, we're operating on Ethereum L1 right now, which is extremely expensive, but extremely secure. And as we move out to other L2s and other, EVM compatible chains that have less security, whether, anytime you're interacting with more contracts, there's less security, right? It's a continuum. There will be less important payloads. And that's again, a design decision for us to say, all right, this payload is less important than this one, therefore it needs less security because we can make things cheaper that way. So right now, the one-to-one sarcophagus to archaeologist curse ratio is just the cheapest and the easiest way to do it, right? But it doesn't have longevity. So, we're maximizing trust into one entity, which we don't want to do. And we're minimizing longevity, which again, for most crypto projects is completely fine. DeFi farming stuff like mercenary capital just goes from here to there, depending on what the newest thing is. And, that's what we expect. But if we're going to build Sarcophagus for the long term, we need to know that people are going to want to use it for years and years, and that they don't want to have to redo everything or relearn everything or have some new economics each time they come back to it to service their deadman switch. So I think as we move forward, we're going to end up seeing different ratios of the Shamir secret sharing scheme. It's SSSS, which again, if people on the call haven't looked into Shamir's, it's one of the coolest and just most simple and well used encryption or sharding schemes out there. I think the way I kind of see this in the future is there's going to be a balance between the number of archaeologists that are cursed per sarcophagus and the weight of what is inside of there. When you're talking about something that is, maybe a non-monetary and more personal, say you're communicating a note to a loved one, that doesn't need overt security. That doesn't need more than a 3 of 5. But say you're Sushi Swap and you want to, do the multi-sig contract. You want to do a pass down for the multi-sig contract. You're talking, billions of dollars in there. So you may want to look at something more close to a 30 of 50. Or the higher numbers. But of course, that requires us to get to a level of maturity and to have enough nodes, enough archaeologists in the network to do that, to pull that off. But yeah, I think with version 2 doing this, 2 huge things is the ability for there to be multiple archaeologists cursed with a single sarcophagus, which eliminates so many security risks just off the bat. But then 2 is allowing archaeologists to come and go from the system. Right. So if you're an arch and you're kind of done doing this, you don't have to wait until the last sarcophagus leaves your responsibility set. You can simply say that I don't want this anymore and transfer it to another archaeologist. Of course, you don't make as much money as you would have, but you have that seamless in and out. So yeah, that's, I think, one of the most important things to add to the longevity of the network is the ability for archaeologists to pass responsibility for a given sarcophagus onto another archaeologist that is of equal or greater reputation. And all the reputation stuff is on chain. If someone's unwrapped a sarcophagus early, that's malicious. Therefore, they will not get those downstream curses. But again, we want to give as much power to the user as possible while also making it really easy to use, which is diametrically opposed. So yeah, I think if we build the underlying structure of this, we'll see a natural balance. But then also we're going to see edge cases where people want to have way more security or they want to have way less security to do things cheaper and faster. So yeah, I think that those 2 features are 2 of the most important things that we're doing right now. We don't want to just push what we have to L2 because there's no point in doing that. We're just going to have to re-architect it anyway. So I think we're kind of taking a pause and saying, let's re-architect this, let's build it right. So that people can trust it, because that's what matters to us. It's not milliseconds or fractions of a penny for this endeavor. It's all about trust and longevity, which again is just very different from most crypto projects that focus on efficiency. Like we're not overly focused on efficiency, which is kind of weird to say. But yeah, I wanted to add that in there before we moved on to other things.
Awesome, thank you for that. All right. Well, I have a few questions from a couple different people in the Discord. Actually, we had a channel opened up for it. The first set of questions is from Bruce Hawley. His first question was, can the file sizes be increased, I assume referring to V2, to accommodate a piece of voice or video?
Yeah. So the thing to remember here is that encryption expands files. So if we have a 1 megabyte file and we encrypt it once, it's going to go to 2 or 3 megabytes. And if we encrypt that again, it's going to go to 7 megabytes. So it's never going to be efficient to store large files in a double encrypted container, period, right? That's just not efficient. However, we can store files of any size or the maximum file size on Arweave if that file is encrypted, and then you use a sarcophagus to host the key, you use a sarcophagus to host the decryption key of a file that sits on the network encrypted a single time. So that way you just use Arweave to host the big file that's like a video file or whatever, it could be gigabytes. but it's encrypted once rather than twice, and it'll save a lot of money. But of course, like our goal is to make this. We would like people to be able to dump whatever file size into it. There's just there's hard limits in terms of how much can be transmitted from a browser reliably to a third-party server. It's just it's a hard problem technically, but we can solve it with that workaround of using Arweave for what it's good at, and then using Sarcophagus for what it's good at. And Sarcophagus is good at transmitting small files that are extremely high value. That's the way I like to think of it anyway.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the next question was, will the later development or more advanced versions ever have a need for KYC, or will it always be something that just anyone can use? Kind of asking about the future of open source there.
I think the base layer of Sarcophagus is obligatorily open source, and it's obligatorily anonymous and censorship resistant, right? So everything we build is built in a way that anyone can run it. And if people want to come in and do a kind of walled garden within that, that's completely fine. So say in the case of a will and trust attorney that wants to offer our service as a white label, that's wonderful. We love that. But that will and trust attorney is going to be taking credit cards, right? So they are KYCing their customers to a certain extent. And whoever that will and trust company uses to buy their crypto to make all this run, they're going to have to be KYC'd. Because you're using USD rails into the crypto land. But again, like one of the core designs of this is completely open source. Again, we are unlicensed. We do not use MIT license. We use absolutely the most permissive license to ever exist. And everything we do is completely built in the open. Even our developer chat is in the open. So I think the core open source principles are what make this strong. KYCing everyone would kill this, just like it would kill Ethereum or Bitcoin or any other network that has longevity. However, in the future, if people want to use this through another third party and don't want to do their own crypto, they don't want to buy their own Ethereum and transmit it to Sarco or whatever, they're more than welcome to use a KYC service and to have all of their wallets managed. They can do hosted wallets. It doesn't matter to us as long as people are still using the core open source and raw system that's at the bottom of this built on Ethereum. Hopefully that's a good enough answer there. But if we had to choose a couple of principles to stick by here, the open source and anonymous accessibility nature of this is one of those deeply, deeply held things that we're not changing if I have anything to do with it anytime soon.
Definitely. And this next question, the answer to it might help talk a little bit about like DAO structure and how that works. The next question is, will there be further listings on sexes after the completion of V2?
I can say it's not a priority. It's just, if we wanted to do a pump and dump, if we wanted to do like a token scheme to have a bunch of VCs exit this, we would have done it by now. We built this software before we released the token. We have software you can use today that we raise money on rather than, vaporware in a PowerPoint. So the centralized exchange listings are interesting. Like, yeah, they provide, some more, well, they don't provide liquidity. The protocol always has to buy liquidity, and they usually use VC money to buy that liquidity from liquidity provider. And then, of course, the exchanges charge money for you to list there because they know that the token price usually pops. So from my perspective, there's only a couple things that people need Sarcophagus tokens for. Creating a sarcophagus and participating in governance. Both of those things are possible with decentralized exchanges. They're just not possible for the uninitiated or otherwise uninformed, uneducated user in DeFi land. And so I would say any centralized exchange that wants to list Sarcophagus, you have all of the information on the website that you need to do so. And there's no reason that you would need to communicate to us, and no reason we would need to support a given exchange. So again, if there's centralized, I think there's one CEX that listed us already, which is cool because we didn't do anything with it. But ideally in the future, all of them proactively list us because they know it's good for them, that people are going to be trading and buying it. But from a perspective of the DAO, from a legal perspective, I don't think it's a good idea for us to pursue listings as a decentralized entity. We can let each centralized exchange and each country or jurisdiction that they're in, they can deal with it themselves. I don't think it's a good use of capital when people already have access on decentralized exchanges.
Okay, great. And actually, you already answered the next two questions. Here's a good one. Are there current competitors, and what are Sarco's core competitive edge? What is Sarco's core competitive edge?
I would say I did years of research before we got into this, and there's centralized competitors which are cool. They work. There's status quo, right, which is using like say will and trust attorneys or using Veracrypt and then mailing USB drives. Like there's all sorts of ways to reproduce this in a centralized or otherwise like kind of uncoordinated way or private, between two parties way. There are several decentralized options out there. Like Killcord is a really good one. Guy Nathan built this, just really, really cool software, killcord.io. There was another one built by a couple of Russian programmers named BitCannery. I don't know if that's still around or not. Again, this is open source and unlicensed, so competition is always good here. They can use our ideas. I think there's Inheriti, which is I think it's crypto, but they're closed source and centralized, so I don't really know how that works. So I think the biggest competitor is just status quo, right? This space is so big, and once people figure out that upside down programming, like the ability to program actions based on failures, once they realize the power of that, there's going to be more competitors. But hopefully, those competitors choose to take our code and work with us rather than to build their own, right? I think if we make the barrier low enough for Sarcophagus to become a part of it or to build on it or to integrate, then we don't really have to worry about competition because all the IP is out there anyway. We don't have the concept of IP in this space. So I think the concept of competition is a little different as well.
With that being said, I guess just to kind of build on that a little bit, one of the other, I would say like non-core V2 features, but something else that we're focused on building this year and improving is the composability of the system and extending dev tools and making it more open and making it easier for other developers to interact with the system both on chain and off chain as well. So yeah, I mean, I really hope that Sarcophagus finds itself in the middle of a burgeoning landscape of, I guess, super secret. I like how you put that upside down programming, like which really is the heart, the focus of what we've been trying to build here, and figure out and wrap our heads around. It's a trippy concept, and it enables a lot of weird things that can't really be done in traditional programming. Dead man switch programming is crazy. So yeah, I mean, definitely like dev tooling, integrations, composability. Those are all things that we're focused on this year. Releasing, dev tooling to make it easier for other people to build stuff that interacts and builds upon.
Awesome, thank you. The next set of, we got two more questions here coming from Bertie Sanchez, and touching a little more on V2 and the multi-arch system you were talking about. How will the Sarco payments be distributed and handled with the addition of multiple archaeologists in the V2 architecture? Sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I don't know if we have all the answers for at the moment.
I was about to say the same thing. Like I think we don't really have that figured out yet. But floating markets are easy, right? Like we can always say there's a floating market for it, and the price and payments are whatever the market will dictate, right? If we want to have each archaeologist assign their own price, and if that price is too high, no one's going to use the system. If it's too low, the archaeologists are not going to participate anymore. Mm-hmm. Assuming maturity, right? Like once we get past the initial like incentivization phase of the archaeologists, because we will be doing incentivization where if you are running a node and doing things right, you will get some incentive from us. But those have end dates. That's something that's kind of only there to kickstart a market. But yeah, I think in terms of how it works with all the different payments to all the different servers is it's going to be more expensive the more curses you do, right? The Arweave cost is constant. So if you have a 1 gigabyte file versus a 1 megabyte file, you're going to have to pay more when you create that sarcophagus. But the responsibility of unwrapping the outer layer once it's on Arweave is a constant cost. And in terms of the cost to the archaeologist, you're talking about an Ethereum gas cost. So it's probably going to be a function of Ethereum gas prices.
on or whatever EVM gas prices that we're using. But yeah, I think it's going to be some sort of market. We might have to put some bumpers on that market in the beginning to make sure it's not too volatile and makes sense. But yeah, that question is yet to be determined. We're still working on it.
One thing that's an idea that we've been kicking around in relation to the end of a sarcophagus. So basically, when the dead man switch is triggered and it's time to basically publish the private key to the outer layer of the encryption. Technically through Shamir secret sharing, it doesn't require that the entire set of archaeologists for sarcophagus need to be present or need to publish their shard, right? It might only require that like 3 of 5 publish their shard on chain. So, that brings up the question, well, should the system only accept the first 3 shards that are published and deny the other 2, and then like only reward the 3 of the 5 archaeologists? And like that's truly like a function of gas prices and gas wars, basically. Like the first 3 quickest archaeologists are the ones getting paid the bounty at the end of the sarcophagus. Or should there be some system in which all 5 could get paid, but like there's just an extra reward for the first 3 that showed up, but as long as the others show up within a block or 2, like they'll get their portion of the reward as well. Because maybe the system doesn't want to. Maybe we don't want to like disincentivize archaeologists that don't know how to participate effectively in gas wars. So it's definitely an open design decision right now. One that I'm certainly open to, having a bigger discussion about in public about what are our options when it comes to, rewarding archaeologists, considering like how fast or slow they might be at the point of unwrapping, and like, do we want to incentivize a system that's only full of like high performance archaeologists, or do we want to have maybe a more inclusive system that takes, still rewards less effective or less fast archaeologists, but allows them to participate? But I don't know, that might have stability issues on just like the system as a whole. I think one could argue that like the system in general would be stronger and more resilient if there's only high performance archaeologists. So I don't know. That's definitely like a discussion that needs to be had. But one thing that I'm thinking about there when it comes to rewarding and paying out archaeologists.
Awesome. Thank you guys for explaining that. And we have one more question left. So if anybody who's here has anything they want to ask, now's a good time to start raising your hand and requesting a mic. So when they're done answering this, I can start bringing you up. The last question from Dirty is, how many developers are currently working on the project, developing V2, and who are they? So I don't know if you guys want to talk about yourselves at all, but that was the question.
A bunch of anons developing this. I'm just kidding. So hi, I'm Trainface. I'm one of the founders of Decent Labs, turning into a DAO, Decent DAO now. I'm leading the technical architecture of this system, along with Super Secret, who's had an extremely influential role in the design of everything that has happened in the Sarcophagus ecosystem so far, including the V1 build out. But I'm working through a lot of the technical design with V2 right now and the V2 features, and trying to just like document that as much as possible, kind of document my thoughts and put development roadmaps and plans in place. Kind of understanding the holistic effects of what these V2 features will bring to the contracts, the archaeologist services, the web app,
different dev tools that get created and spun out and compartmentalized from all the code that's getting written. So that's my main role right now. And we've got a handful of developers that are going to be working on this over the course of this year, just with the build out of all this stuff. But right now, it's definitely still in technical architecture phase. We haven't written any code for V2 yet, other than just like prototyping things, making sure that the ideas that we're having are going to actually work in practice. So it's all just been like prototype code, nothing production quality yet. So that's where we're at in the development. But yeah, multiple devs, smart contract front end, and back end service, working on archaeologist services. Working in tandem, bringing these things to life over the course of this year.
I think something else we always say anytime that we do any public talks is, while everyone in crypto is hiring, right? Everyone is constantly looking for the unicorn full stack engineer. I think that's the broken system, where companies go out and they make offers with different variations of cushy payments, benefits, whatever, right? So I think we're doing it a little bit backwards, where we're putting out the product. We're starting with a few people that we have. We still have a team and funding and all that, right? But we're not out here trying to hire people on LinkedIn. And I think it's working because everyone who's working on this wants to be here. Obviously we pay, everyone who works on this gets paid, and they get paid well. And they also have upside with token payments, whether you're coming from the Decent Lab side or the Decent DAO side or the Sarcophagus DAO side. We're all working on the same problem. And if you have some sort of affinity for this problem, it's something that we would want you to come work on too. Even if it's not full-time, it's part-time. I think from my experience in technology and blockchain and doing this for a long time, you can have a part-time employee that is anonymous that will deliver 5 times as much value as your full-time standard developer who's looking for a paycheck and a ride home at 5 p.m. So, we're very much trying to find people. We're trying to attract and trying to radicalize people into this idea. And if it's something that people like, it's something that you want to participate in, please come forward and find something to work on. We're very, I have a bias towards people who commit action, right? They come to us and say, I want to work on this. We see a problem here. I want to work on this. And they're willing to start to get integrated into how the existing structure works. We're constantly looking for new people, but we're not doing it in the traditional way. So please come through. And if you see something you want to work on, that's what we want. We want passionate people that may or may not be full-time. No one gives a shit. We don't care what your name is. We don't care where you're at. We pay American wages because we raise money in America. If you are in a place that's a lower cost of living, then congrats to you, right? You're going to get paid just as much. I like to think of the involvement in this as more of a concentric circles than a hierarchy. So, we've got the core contributors, which are, the speakers on this call right now. And then, as you do concentric circles out from that, you have people who are less and less involved. Maybe they do some work for the DAO or the ambassadors. And then, we have circles over that are, people that are monitoring the project, have maybe done some testing, submitted some bug reports. Like, those are still people that are part of the team, right? That is still part of this. And then the wider concentric circle of people that, follow us on Twitter. There's just all sorts of layers of people involved. So we want to grow that core layer, but we also want to grow all the other ones. Just the more people who are looking on this, the better. And, if you do have some skill set that is, attractive to blockchain, then come through. We want to talk.
Yeah, I think self-starters. We want self-motivated people who just do things, even if what you do isn't that great. Just getting it done and showing it to us is so impressive and makes us so excited. Like, really, there's no hierarchy and no one's going to shoot down your idea. Like, I want everyone to tell us all of their ideas, and I want to involve everyone in everything we do.
I think this is reflected across multiple facets too, even with the community and like the ambassadors. That's what everybody's looking for, is passion and, you know, people who come in and, you know, do something that makes an impact in the community. And because I get asked that question a lot, like how to become an ambassador or how to make a difference. And it's like just doing something, being there, talking to people, and creating articles, do what you're good at. And that's what we want to see. Doing something that's unique, you know, and saying something in your own words, you know, don't do what you think we want to see and just kind of copy and paste text, but like reformat it so it looks a little different. But it's like, hey, I did the assignment. This is what they're looking for. Yeah, I think whatever you see a lot is usually the opposite of what we're looking for. We want to see things that are like totally from a different perspective. That's always like the most valuable thing.
Real quick, this is Seth here. I am dev on both on the V1 project and as well as on the V2 project. If anybody here is listening and they want to get involved on the dev side, I would encourage you to check out the Sarcophagus GitHub. There's some active discussion happening around V2 on there right now, and there's also a bunch of open source code related to V1. Great way to get involved with V2 would be to read some of the code on V1, especially the contracts, just to understand the setup. But you can jump on there and just start reading and learning. Great way to get started.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any hands up currently, so if anyone has any closing thoughts, we can. Now would be the time.
I've actually got a couple more questions for the devs. I'm looking at the V2 discussions on GitHub. I'm curious if you guys have some sort of order that you're looking to go in and tackling the V2 development tasks.
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think in more or other than like features, I'm not really looking at it as feature-based order, but more so architecture order. You know, at the end of the day, the smart contracts that are running on the EVM network, you know, Ethereum mainnet and other EVMs later, those contracts are the things that define how the system works and what constraints are put in place that make the system work. So the contracts are the most important pieces. Like technically, you don't need the web app to use Sarcophagus. You know, technically, you can just you can interact with the whole thing from the command line if you know what you're doing. So but what is it that you're interacting with? What is it that actually like makes the whole system work and tick? It is the smart contracts on chain. So that's the place where I'm like centering and focusing, like this is where things need to be solid and airtight and like designed very well. So that's kind of where things are going to start from my mind, like as development gets going. You know, as we like run into design issues or work through bugs or need to, you know, make decisions about, you know, tweaking how some features might work due to like constraints or you know, implement things that we would just like figure out during implementation. All that stuff's going to be driven from the contracts and getting those contracts written. So yeah, it's not really like features that I'm looking at first. It's more so the smart contracts need to get, you know, we need to get like a good start on those before we truly understand how exactly the web app and the archaeologists are going to function. So yeah, that's where we'll be starting, is with contracts.
Thanks, Trainface. And I also wanted to ask too about the one initiative of removing Sarco as the payment token. just so people who are maybe unfamiliar with the protocol understand what's going to be at that point the Sarco token main purpose.
Man, you know, like I maybe even shouldn't have started that discussion. That's one that is definitely like not at all a thing that's guaranteed. Very much just like open-ended discussion. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what the resolution of that is going to be. I certainly do not anticipate, or that has never been a part of the discussion of like what V2 is, up until it was just like an idea that was swirling around in my head over the last couple of weeks. So I
it's
don't know.
worth mentioning though that
yeah,
that's
I don't know if this
we
is the best
did
venue
start.
for that. I'm just thinking about it though.
we did start this project with the idea that we didn't have to have a token at all, right? That we would just do this on Ethereum. But then also at that time, we thought we were just going to use Ethereum as the storage component, right? And at that time, gas was under 10 GWE. So it was possible, but even then it would be too expensive to use Ethereum to store photos. So Arweave had to come about. Like IPFS wasn't good enough because it's not because it's interactive. So Arweave had to come about. So the Sarcophagus token will always be used for governance, and it always will live on Ethereum, barring any sort of like major innovation. But how people pay for the service I don't think it's highly relevant. We want people to have the easiest experience possible. Mm-hmm. So I think what will end up happening is rather than having like a Zapper style AMM into the system to say, hey, you can pay with everything, but you're going to have to pay like on the low cost networks, on the like L2 networks, this would work. We could say, if you have any composable value whatsoever, you can pay for Sarcophagus with that. And you won't see it on the front end, but on the back end or on the contracts, it'll run your ETH or DAI or whatever through an AMM by Sarco, and then contribute that Sarco to the contract, right? So it'll work just like that. But the ability to pay in a stable coin has issues when it comes to bonding for the archaeologist network. Luckily, again, everything's composable. That helps, but it does increase some friction, and it increases like some timing attack vectors. So yeah, I think it's worth talking about, but it's a complicated question. But at the end of the day, our goal is to build a robust, ongoing deadman switch. And if that means we don't use the Sarco token as payment, then we don't use Sarco token as payment. But anything to further that goal is what we're going to do. So I guess it's very much up in the air whether that's going to be a thing. But all the protocol revenues, all that shit will still live at Sarco. So it's still the same economics. It's just whether that's used in the front end or not.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you for tackling that question. Yeah, definitely don't want to like scare people or whatever, or make it think that like this is a thing that we're doing is changing the use or the economics of the Sarco token. It's definitely not the intention here. Just spitballing ideas and trying to understand like how can we make the user experience easier for everybody. That was just the intention with that discussion.
Yeah, and real quick, Trainface, I'm glad you said that. I think user experience is definitely one of the biggest things we're focused on here too for V2. Right now, if you want to set up an archaeologist, you got to have a PhD, and we want to get rid of that. So we want to make it so people can just onboard, become archaeologists in droves. We want to get as many people doing the arch side of things as possible. We think the front end's already pretty slick and pretty nice, but definitely make some tweaks there. It's definitely need some nice lifts and upgrades to deal with the new system. So yeah, just wanted to say that's kind of also a focus of this V2.
Yeah, definitely a big focus, both in terms of, one thing that we haven't really talked about on this call, but the idea of splitting archaeologist responsibilities between multiple services, multiple actors. Like right now, in order to be an effective archaeologist, you need to, hold tokens on multiple chains, right? You need to both write data to Arweave. You also need to write data to Ethereum to perform your duties as an archaeologist. And so like that means that you just need to be really crypto savvy and know how to like have assets and interact with multiple chains and securely store private keys for multiple chains and all that. Obviously the software itself is making transactions for you, but you do need to have you need to hold tokens for multiple chains in order to be an archaeologist. And people might not want to do that. There might be some people that only want to write data to Arweave and just like have their job just be an atomic one-time thing at the beginning of beginning of a sarcophagus, right? And just be done with it. So I guess what I'm saying there is that if you're performing the duties of writing payloads to Arweave, that is not a long-running responsibility. That is a responsibility that just happens once, right at the beginning of an of a sarcophagus creation, and then you're done. it's the other side of that, of an archaeologist, in which they need to be responsive and be aware of the life cycle of all of their sarcophagus or sarcophagi. That is a long running responsibility. And that is one where you need to write data to Ethereum. You need to create Ethereum transactions. And so like, I guess naturally thinking about that, there's an easy split there. Like Arweave is a one-time, quick, short-lived responsibility, and writing to Ethereum is a long-lived responsibility. And so why do we have all of that bundled into one service that somebody needs to run to be an archaeologist? We can logically split that up into two different services and maybe find two different types of people or two different types of institutions or actors who might want to run one or the other. And if you want to do both, that's easy. You can just run both of these services on your laptop. It's no big deal. So yeah, definitely want to like help find different groups of people to participate as an archaeologist. And then, yeah, kind of to, Dev with the grudges point about making it easier to actually run an archaeologist. Trying to make a lot of upgrades to the ease of not only setting up an archaeologist for the first time, but also making sure that it is part of a more robust peer-to-peer network with embalmers. So right now it's tough to make sure that your archaeologist is accessible from any given embalmer. You have to basically know how to be a server administrator in order to do so. Not the easiest thing. So we're implementing different peer-to-peer networking libraries to make it easier to not need to basically run like a Web2 style server off your machine, but instead use more Web3 native peer-to-peer networking systems and libraries to make it easier for embalmers and archaeologists to connect to each other and talk to each other.
Well, thank you. I've got to head out. Obviously, thank you to everyone for participating here. I really appreciate everyone coming on and talking through. Hopefully, you do more of these and have more updates. But I think, like we've talked through this, and TrainFace has said that mostly conceptual design stuff, trying to do architecture before writing code, just because writing code's expensive and you don't want to do it twice. So hopefully, we will be able to have more tangible things to talk about. But I think, who was it, Einstein, that said if you had one day to solve a problem, he would spend until 11:50 deciding what the problem was, and then 10 minutes solving it. So I think very much want to do that style here of research heavy. Let's build things once and try to not fall into the same traps and need to do code patches and refactoring of small parts. Like shit's just not worth it. So. If we've got a crypto winter here, then we should take the time to build this right and wait until the next time things go nuts, and that's when we can start to see more of the social media and PR style releases. But right now, I think it's heavy GitHub, heavy research, and heavy just like putting work in. This is nose down time rather than PR time.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Have you got any last minute comments?
Yeah, last minute comments from the Decent DAO side. We're really excited to kickstart this V2 development. And for those that might tune in later after the fact, just know that following this project along is a really great way to learn about Web3 application development, get exposure to new projects through Decent DAO, Sarcophagus, early stage crypto investing, if you will, digital rights and privacy, cybersecurity. All of these are impacted here because at the end of the day, Sarcophagus is a secure end-to-end encrypted messaging system. So that's what we love to do, and that's what we're focused on as a DAO going forward.
Awesome. In closing, want to remind everyone, check out the Sarcophagus Discord and the Decent DAO Discord. We have a public developer channel for Sarcophagus in the Decent Discord, so you can keep up with conversations happening there, votes, and everything. And with that, thanks everyone for coming, and everybody have a good evening.